Hello and welcome to the next episode of Eat, Move, Win and the musings of a Bolshie Queenager. And I am delighted to have our guest today. She is, oh God, I don't even know how to describe her. So Christine Bellisle is with us. She is an international rugby player, plays for Scotland. And I've known Christine for, I want to say, no, it must be quite a long time, actually. So we must have met, must have been about 2016.
Yeah.
Oh, Christ.
I reckon so.
And she's only 30, so literally must have met her kind of when she was at school. Anyway, so welcome to the show, Christine. It's lovely to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I think we'll go straight into a big question, right? So you play international rugby. You played in the Six Nations last year. Was it last year? Or was it this? No,
last year, this year. Last year and this year.
And it was kind of quite cool to see you on telly because we were like, my little boy plays rugby. So we watch a lot of rugby on telly. I still don't know any of the rules. But I know.
Cute.
So that's a little bit of a story. How did you get into playing rugby, Christine?
So I grew up in Canada, as I'm sure you can tell from my thick Scottish accent that I've acquired. And it was available to me in high school. It was probably available earlier, but like my parents never really looked for sports like that. So when I was 14 and I went into high school, I was still super shy and didn't want to play a team sport. So all of my friends played that year, loved it. I kind of had like a little bit of like FOMO about it. Like I wish that I'd done it, but then the following year there was a tour to Ireland and I knew I definitely wanted to go to Ireland. So that was my gateway. So I started playing and it just fit. Like I've always been 5'9". I've always been an athlete. Like I've got friends who've always been like size zeros. So it was really great for me to find a sport so young that helped me like celebrate my strengths and like how different I was from a lot of my friends, because it is a bonus when you are naturally taller, more muscular, like you can use those skills. So it just like fit like a glove. So I played all through high school. I played for my club team in Peterborough. And then I moved away for a bit. I was on the west coast of Canada, just working at like a resort property. So there wasn't really any sports there, saved up some money, moved to Scotland. And after a year of working in restaurants, I was like, I really need to broaden my horizons here and meet people that are more like me. So I just started playing for a club team. And I was just really fortunate that one of the men's coaches was like a development officer for Scotland as well. So he had seen a lot of us play, because he also was responsible for like scouting girls into like the women and girls programs. So obviously, because I'm not Scottish, we didn't know if that was going to be an option. He was like, we should just see, because there are different rules around how you qualify. Like if you have a Scottish grandparent or there's a residency kind of thing as well. So I had lived in Scotland for 3 years. And so that's how I qualified to play for Scotland. They've since changed it to 5 years. But yeah, I was brought in for a trial session essentially with the sevens girls, which, I mean, if you know anything about rugby, sevens is a completely different game to 15s. I play 15s normally. Sevens is faster. Like these girls, you don't like, it's insane. Like if a lot of girls who grew up in like track and field, like sprinters, that kind of stuff, like really powerful athletes play sevens because you can get the ball on the 5-meter line and do a 95-meter sprint. And if you're the fastest girl there, like you're going to do well. So that's not really where my strengths lie, but
that sounds like something that I'd be good at though.
yeah. I mean, I definitely, like when I first started playing, I played in a different position than I do now. So I definitely was a little bit like lighter and a little bit faster, but I'm not a sevens player, but I think I must have obviously impressed the coach enough for them to want to develop me. And I've always prided myself on never being outworked. Like you can never have a bad day off the ball. So I think you can show a lot about like what you're capable of doing with your ability to ask questions, and your coachability is massive. Like you can't show up to a thing and think that you already know everything. And obviously that applies to everything that you do. But I think hopefully my Canadian charm got me in a little bit. So and I've just kind of clawed my way in. But it's been a long road as well. Like when I started playing, I got capped in 2019
Mhm.
in South Africa, which was really cool. So I played 2 games, and then that's following Six Nations in the spring, I didn't play at all. So I was always like 24th or 25th man. Yeah, so that was always really challenging because I fully respect and appreciate, like, there's been girls in the squad for years longer than me, right? And you have to earn your stripes, and I have no issue doing that. But it is challenging to constantly be working and not getting an opportunity to kind of show what you're capable of. But I think the thing that got me to stick around in terms of like coaches continuing to select me was I just brought good vibes to the rest of the squad. So even if I wasn't playing, like, there's no reason to be totally miserable about it because there are so many other girls that would have loved to be in the position that I was in at that time as well. And I mean, you just have to kind of respect the game, and over time was able to get into it. So it's been a really cool road. And like, I think only the last little bit I've realized how wild my life is, but I feel very, very fortunate for the opportunities that I've gotten, for sure.
It's like, I think from an outsider looking in, Scottish women's rugby has just exploded. And I don't know whether that's because women's sports in general, there's a lot more focus, there's a lot more media attention. But when you watch you guys playing rugby, it's absolutely insane. Like, I was chatting to my little boy plays rugby, and there is a women's team. And a while back I had said, I think I'd quite like to give it a go. And they're like, oh, it's touch. And I was like, I don't think I want to do touch. I think I just
What's the
want
point then? Yeah.
I think I just want to bulldoze into people. But yeah, obviously it's a lot bit more technically advanced than that. But like, from like going back to when you were like 15, you said you're like quite shy, which kind of blows my head in the first place because I can't imagine being that.
I know.
Like, did you have to face like fears about, getting really physical? Because, girls are kind of taught that, we don't do physical sports, we don't go in for tackles and whatnot. How was that, overcoming that?
Yeah, I think the biggest kind of like anxiety that I had around sport, and not just rugby, like team sport in general, was I didn't want to not be good at something. I'm very competitive. And I also don't think I realized that when I was young. Yeah, so like I had all those like feelings, but I didn't know what they meant, sort of thing. So I didn't recognize that that's just me being like fiercely competitive and not wanting to look bad at things or whatever. But I think once I kind of got over that is what's going to happen, because that's how you learn. Like, no one starts something ever and is the best at it. Like, I mean, I've been playing now for like over 10 years and I'm still not the best at it, right? Like, that's just how things go. But I think the biggest thing that really aided me in kind of getting comfortable with like smashing people was I was around a bunch of really cool, strong other like girls, like I was playing with girls who had played for much longer than me. So even though they were like a year older than me, our captain, her name was Kayla Root, she was captaining like the under 18s Canada team at the time as well. So like she had the same kind of fierce competitiveness that I saw in myself, but didn't know how to kind of harness, and she kind of took me under her wing and looked after me. And, you get positive reinforcement from your teammates, from your coaches, like, and you see other really cool, like your friends just doing it like it's nothing. So it just kind of like builds up your confidence in doing it. So it became a lot easier because of the people that I was around as well, and the coaches that I had, for sure.
Yeah, it's so incredible to watch. And it's just like people just bouncing off of each other, and it's like, I'm going to run some more. So it's so cool. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, with the explosion in women's team sports and we've got more media focus, how have you adapted to that? Because obviously when you've started rugby, it's been school level, then university, and then it's been like club level, and you probably go to a match on a Sunday and it's pissing with rain and there's like 3 people and 2 of them actually are the groundsmen.
Are hungover.
Yeah, like, we don't even know why they're just on their way back when they walk of shame and there's some girls in short. But now you're on telly. Now you've got I've got some questions from younger girls for you as well. So like, you're in the public eye. How have you adapted to that kind of responsibility, and how have you adapted to, making sure that you are being you, but also representing your country, well, kind of technically as your country now, your adopted country.
Yeah.
How's that been for you?
I think you're just a lot more like conscious of the things that you're sharing and posting, you know, like I'm very active on social media. I post on Instagram all the time and I'm not going to change that. And I'm not really going to change what I post, you know, but you have to be a lot more selective of the things that you do share. I think, I mean, I know that I can definitely get a little wild sometimes with my friends, but for the most part, like for the most part, I'm not a bad kid, you know. So I don't think I would like to hope that the things that people see on social media reflect how I am behind closed doors as well. So yeah, it's just being a lot more conscious of the influence that you have as well, especially knowing that a lot of my audience is younger girls hoping to do what I'm doing one day, you know, and I think that's a huge responsibility that I don't take lightly. And I don't think that any of my teammates take lightly as well. So yeah, it's just being very kind of conscious of the messages that you're putting out and yeah, just like the things that you also want to share as well, because like by no means do I have like millions of followers, but I have enough, you know, people who I don't know personally following my stuff that I think, right, if I post this picture, do my friends from home want to be in it? Like, do they want to be seen by people they don't know? Or do I want to share those parts of my life or the things that are going on here with people that I don't know? And like, I do think, especially like when I was running my business and stuff as well, like I always want to be as authentic as possible because I think people relate to you more the more you are yourself. But yeah, it's just kind of walking that line between like continuing to share as much as I can for people to know who I am, because I think especially within like how women's rugby is growing, people are buying into it not just because the quality of rugby is good, you know, like we're exciting to watch, but also because I think the women's side especially is so much more um easy to access, like how the players actually are. Like people want to watch us because they know who we are, they feel like they know who we are, like because we share so much more kind of personal bits about us.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just being conscious about finding that, you know, balance. And everybody's different. Some of my friends don't really post at all. You'll be lucky if you see them post twice a year, but you know, it's everybody's allowed to do what they want. And I'm not going to kind of stop how I'm doing it. It's just recognizing that I've got little eyes on me for sure.
Yeah, I think it is. Like I've seen Archie, my little boy, when we go to Warriors games or and the players come out and some of them will do autographs and they're just around. And I think having that level of accessibility to show that, you know, sports people are normal people and
Yeah.
you know, having that visibility. And I think going back to what you said about your message and being authentic, you have a really powerful message that you put out. And this is something that you've always been like, I've known you for a number of years and you've always been very focused on celebrating strength in your physique for what it can do rather than for what it can look like. And that's hugely important, I think, when especially if your audience are younger girls. So tell us a little bit about the journey that you've been on around body acceptance and, you know, being strength over physique.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, again, like I said before, like a lot of my friends were much smaller than me, both in height and in stature, like just size wise. And I was conscious of it. But I think I am very fortunate to have grown up with a really good mom who didn't really instill any value on what my body looked like, you know? So obviously when you're growing up, you're going to be conscious of the differences between you and your friends. And there were definitely times I can still remember a time when I was honestly probably 14 and I remember crying because I had stretch marks on my legs and my mom and my aunt were trying to console me, you know, but like you're a kid and you don't know any better and your friends don't have, or maybe they do, but like it's one of those things where because everybody's very conscious of what their bodies are doing and they're changing and everything, like you don't want to talk about those things because you don't want to be the weird one out, right? So I think like there were definitely times where I didn't love what my body looked like, but I think because I started strength training quite young, because I wanted to do well in rugby, I knew that that was had to go hand in hand. So I started in the gym. I got myself a personal trainer, Wesley, who is the best. I still keep in contact with him now. He's like a total cool dude. But he just like kind of took me under his wing as well and got me started. And I fell in love with it because I also, for me, it was like, that's really what ignited the whole what my body can do versus what it looks like. And I mean, my body has changed dramatically over the course of like 10 years. And sometimes it's been thinner and has less body fat, and other times it's had more and has been heavier, or you know what I mean? Like it's, and I think because I'm able to remove the value of those things from who I am as a person, has made it a lot easier. Like there are obviously still some days where you're like, oh, I wish that I, you know, I wish I didn't feel like this or whatever. But for the most part, I just think that those are just dark days, because as long as I'm still healthy and I'm still able to do the things that I'm doing, I'm fortunate. Like I'm lucky to be able to get up and down to off the ground for the most part with not a lot of pain, you know. But when you play in the front row, there's definitely some aches and pains. But like I know like so many people don't have the privilege that I have to just be healthy, you know, so I have to really recognize that and want to continue to ride that wave for as long as I can. So yeah, I think I always try to remember in the times where I'm maybe not as happy with how my body is looking, I think, but what is it doing for me? Like I'm at the top of my game. I'm living my dream right now. And yes, I may be carrying more body fat than I would normally be comfortable with. I don't really care, because that's not the thing that's going to define whether I'm successful or not in my sport, or the things like it's not defining whether I'm healthy or not, because I am a healthy person, you know? Yeah. So I always try to keep the focus around that. And that's come from years of practicing, you know, like it's not a thing that just happens overnight where you're like, right, I don't care about what I look like. I don't care what size I am. I don't care, like, because you're always going to care a little bit. You want to feel super confident in your body and your skin, like, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to have that change to make you feel better. But I think like my why has always been, as long as I'm performing to the best of my ability, and as long as I am moving well, like even in off seasons and stuff, you know, like as long as I'm able to continue to do the things that I love, then that's all I really should be caring about. Like I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm living my best life. So it's like that has to constantly be on a reel. Otherwise it's easy to go like into a dark hole for sure.
Yeah, so and I totally resonate with that as well. And I think this is not a scientific study that I have done, but just like over the last few years of talking to women who have done a sport in their youth that has like involved some kind of level of power or strength, seem to have a much higher level of body acceptance for being bigger or more muscular as they get older, because it's seen as a tool to help them get better at what they do at a very young age. So you did rugby at school, I did athletics, I did 100, 200 meters. So there was a lot of squatting, there was a lot of leg work, there was a lot of like power output stuff. So I've always had really big thighs and big shoulders, and I'm just built like that. And I grew up in the 90s when heroin chic was the thing, and I was like, I'm never gonna have thighs like that, I'm never gonna have arms like that, I'm never gonna have like the Bambi limbs. And it took me a long time. As you say, it's not as simple as an overnight fix of, well, I just have to love it, but almost actually it is. That's a decision that you have to make internally, but then you have to practice that as you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's hugely important. And if you do want, like for any of the girls that are listening, and hopefully there will be younger girls listen, whatever it is that you want to do, if you do want to do some sports as a teen or a preteen, then getting strong is something that you do have to do, and that getting
it's
strong,
essential.
Yeah, and like now we know like stronger people live longer, people with more muscle mass live longer. Like higher muscle mass is a better indicator of health than what body fat is now. So the more muscle you have, the longer you're going to live, and the more mobile and active you're going to be as you get older. So it's so vital to get into some form of strength work, no matter what it is that you do. Right.
Yeah.
Big topic. I love that topic. Anyway, I've got some questions for you. So I went out, as I mentioned, my wee boy plays rugby, and there's a lot of girls at the rugby club. So I went out to some of the coaches and said, right, if any of the younger girls got questions for Christine. So I do have some questions. Now, so the first one is from Lucy. She's in P7, so 11, 12-ish. What does it feel like to be playing for Scotland?
It feels so cool. Like, I think At first I was concerned that I was gonna get some backlash or judgment or something, because obviously I didn't grow up here, but I've lived in Scotland for what'll be 8 years now, and I do consider it home. So to be able to play for my country, it is incredible. I feel so lucky. I'm always so like humbled when we're singing Flower of Scotland and everyone's singing it back, you
You
know, and being
cry.
able to, oh my God, every time. It's just like, it's just so powerful, and it is, yeah, it's incredible. I feel very lucky for sure.
Um, Going back to backlash, any backlash from your family back home that you're not playing for
No,
Canada?
thankfully, no. I mean, all my friends and family are just happy for me. You know, they see how happy I am here as well. And I think too, the other thing is because I didn't move to Scotland to play for Scotland. I didn't move here I just moved here to live here. You know, I wanted to have this be my home before I started playing again. And so being able to represent Scotland on the world stage is just an added bonus. So yeah, they're all super proud of me, which is nice. Obviously, like some of them are like, "Are you sure you don't want to come back and play for Canada?" I'm like, "Nope, thank you though." I'm really happy here. Yeah.
Right, next question is from Millie, primary 6, so that would be 10, 11. What advice would you give to your younger self if you knew you were going to be in this position now?
That's a big question.
I'm going to answer this for you. Don't get drunk.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Whew. Don't go out as often. No, I don't know. Like, I feel like the decisions that I've made have allowed me to get here. I think maybe being more comfortable with getting uncomfortable and being okay with making mistakes. Because again, as I said, I'm very competitive. I can also be very hard on myself. But mistakes are all part of learning. So I think maybe if I could tell myself, my younger self, like, to just chill out a bit and not be so stressed when those things happen, because it's all part of the process, that would probably make getting to where I am now a little bit more enjoyable. But I think in terms of like the things that I've done and the decisions that I've made, obviously they all worked out for the right thing. But yeah.
A good question, actually.
Yeah, really good.
Ailey, first one, have you ever broken a bone?
Have I? Yes, I have. I broke my arm once, but it was when I used to horseback ride, so not rugby related.
I'm really surprised.
I know. I've been very, very, very lucky.
She also asked how long you've been playing for, but we kind of covered that off earlier on.
Yeah.
What age did you start rugby and why?
So I started at 15, and mostly because my friends were going, it was on a tour to Ireland. So that was really the main reason why. And then I did fall in love with it. So that was an added bonus as well.
I've got a question that this has not been asked by one of the kids. Why Scotland? Why did you want to come here?
So I had a friend, I used to work at a summer camp when I was like 15 and 16, and you meet people from all over the world when you're there. And so one of my friends who I'd met there was getting married, and he was Scottish. So he invited all of us who had worked with him to the wedding, and only 2 of us ended up going. So we cruised over to Glasgow and we were at the wedding, and then we backpacked around the UK, mostly Scotland, for like 2.5 months. And I always just felt very like at peace in Glasgow, which I don't know, it just felt like home, and I knew I was always going to come back, and I didn't know what that looked like, but yeah, it was the right decision to come back. I think when we first flew back over, because the same friend and I moved back over briefly, she was on a visa, and I have an Irish passport, so that's actually what allows me to, or what allowed me to live and stay. So we had originally planned to fly into Glasgow and then take the train across to Edinburgh and look for somewhere to live there. And we both got there, and I was like, I don't want to leave Glasgow. And she was like, me either. I was like, yeah. So we just stayed, and then her visa expired, and she was like, well, I have to go. And I was like, I'm going to stay. And then, yeah, 8 years later, here I am. So, yeah.
Love it. I find that quite a lot with Canadians, that they kind of feel like there's a kind of natural affinity to Scotland. Yeah. Because I'm always like, why would you leave like somewhere like Canada to live here when we don't get any sunshine?
I love it.
The sun is now out.
It's like, yeah.
Next question. Oh, this is a good one. What helps you come back from setbacks? This is a very mature question. This is from Maddie. What helps you come back from setbacks like injury, defeat, not being selected?
Oh, so I mean, in terms of selection, when I went through that period when I was, because I've more consistently selected now, which I've worked hard for, which has been great. But when I first started and I wasn't getting selected, it is hard. But I think the thing that I would always focus on is what I'm still here. And so what are the things that I can bring to the squad to help them prepare best? Because if I show up with a rotten attitude, how do I think I'm going to even be brought back in? You know, if you're not selected and you show up grumpy, like there are so many other people that will come in with a better attitude that they can bring for the squad than you are with a rotten one. So that was the biggest thing that I would focus on. And then the only thing I can do is continue to, review what I'm doing, ask questions of my coaches, like, how can I get better? What do you want to see from me? And then work on those things. Like, it just takes time and it takes committing to doing the hard work. Because I mean, it is hard and it sucks sometimes, but like at the end of the day, you want to be there on the pitch with your friends. So if you do all the hard work, it pays off and you get to have fun. So I think just like kind of keeping focus around that. But injury is always very hard as well. Like last year after Six Nations, I had a bulged disc in my neck. So yeah, it was awful. That's probably the worst injury I've had because I wasn't allowed to really do anything for like 4 weeks. And then I was just starting to like be allowed to run after 5 or 6 weeks. I wasn't allowed to do any contact. So I basically missed, like I was in camp with
That's
everybody
rubbish.
leading
The
up to the
first thing you're allowed to do is run. Like, oh.
yeah, because they have to see if it aggravates anything. It's brutal. So like all my friends were prepping for the World Cup, like we're in preseason, and I am on a bike watching them run around and play games, And I mean, it's not like, and I'm saying games like, oh, that sounds fun. They're brutal. They're absolutely brutal games. And like, so part of you is sort of like, oh God, I'm glad I'm not out there doing that. But equally, you're like, but that's how you're getting better. That's how you're getting fitter. That's how you're working with your team, right? So to not be a part of that was really difficult. And I need to be honest, like honestly, the first 4 weeks when I was in camp, but not really allowed to do anything, I cried pretty much every day at some point. It was brutal. But I think I had really good people around me, and I had to keep reminding myself like every day something is getting a little bit better. So I just had little progress markers for myself because I can't measure it against anyone else, because my friends who are benching 70, 80 kilos, I can't press a 3 kilo dumbbell right now because the nerve that's affecting my tricep through, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I can't measure what I'm doing versus what they're doing because we're never going to match up and it's only going to make me feel more like garbage. Right. So yeah, just like little indicators of like things that feel better, better movements, less pain, like, and acknowledging, I think too, that it is going to feel awful. Like you're allowed to also sit in that as well. I think if you just try to constantly be oh, everything's fine, I feel great, like that's exhausting. It's not great and it is really awful sometimes. So yeah, I think like acknowledging that it's like not the best time for you is important, but also recognizing like things are always getting better. And I had a really, really good support group because all of my friends were there every day. And even when I was crying with what felt like maybe nothing, because it just gets overwhelming or you get exhausted, like I always had someone there to just be there. So I was very fortunate with that for sure.
Do you have like sports psychologists and stuff as part of the team?
Yeah, so sports psychology is something that was brought in post World Cup. So we've got a lot more support with it. We had it all through Six Nations. So we had a psychologist coming in that you could like book appointments with. And that's obviously super essential because especially through like a Six Nations tournament, like it's a long slog. And as much as there's loads of fun stuff that happen with your friends, like if you don't personally feel like you're performing well, or if the team's not putting up the results that we think that we deserve, things like that, it is hard because when it's your job, it's not just a game anymore, and you put a lot more pressure on the things that you need to be doing. So having that support has been really, really good. Yeah, and I think as obviously the game grows and as like our team becomes more and more professional, every day, every year, we should see more of that as well, which has been really good.
Oh, love it. Final question from Orla, P5. Who's your best friend in the Scotland swimming team?
That's such a hard one. Oh, I'm gonna get roasted. So I don't have one best friend. I probably have two best friends. So Mary McDonald, we call her Wee Maz, and Louise McMillan, Blue. are probably the girls that I spend the most time with. We called ourselves like the Glasgals as well, because before we all moved to England to play in the Premiership down here, we were all training up in Scotland. So most of the girls lived through in Edinburgh. So they'd have sessions with like 12 or 15 of them. And we would be in the gym together, doing pitch sessions together in Glasgow, just 3 of us at like 7 a.m., 3 times a week. So we were the Glasgals plus our coach Tyrone. So we just spent a lot of time together and got really close. But yeah, I would say that those two are probably like my closest friends. I do live with Helen Nelson as well down in England, and we've gotten quite close as well. But yeah, it's a difficult one because we are genuinely like a little family. But yeah, that's a tough question. But yeah, probably those two girls.
Right, and this is the last question for me. What advice would you give any of these P5s, 6, 7s, first years, these teens and pre-teens, about what they should be considering now if they want to continue with the rugby?
I think the first thing would be just like try to enjoy it, because when you're having fun, you're going to show what you can do. Like if you put too much pressure on yourself, that's when you start making little mistakes, those kind of things. Like just go out and enjoy it first. Ask a lot of questions from your coaches, like how can you get better? What do they see that you're really good at, so that you know how you can make those skills your super skills. But then look at the things that maybe aren't the best, because we all have them, and how do you improve them? Ask for help. I think obviously the sooner you can start like strength training, the better, because the longer of a foundation you have of strength behind you, even if you are like 12, is so important. You know, you don't have to be squatting the same weights that I'm squatting right now, because I've been training.
I saw you did a big PR of a squat recently.
Yeah, but like I've been squatting for like over 10 years now, you know, so you've got to start somewhere. But the sooner you start, the better you become, the better you'll feel when you're training, the less likely you are to be injured, you know, like these are all things. And like the better you'll also feel in yourself. Like I can't even begin to explain how good it feels to learn how to deadlift, like regardless if you play sports or not. Like seeing what you're able to do is super empowering. So the sooner you can start those things, the better. But yeah, I think like the biggest thing is just remaining coachable. So asking lots of questions, not being afraid to get maybe some feedback that doesn't feel great all the time. But the biggest thing is to just still have fun. Like you're still right at the beginning of everything that can happen for you now. So just enjoying it is the best, and being willing to try new things as well, because I started out playing outside center and now I play in the front row. So I used to be one of the fast girls that ran a lot. I used to be a back, and now I'm as front row can be, right? I'm as forward as you can be. So yeah, just being willing to try new things if coaches ask you to try them, and just enjoy the ride.
Love it. Thanks. Right, where can people find you on socials if you're willing to put that out there?
Of course, yeah. So my like more personal page is itme.cb. So that's where I'll post like loads of my life, essentially lots of rugby content. I was recently just back in Canada visiting my family, so there's a little bit more like life content. And then when I do run my business, which I'm not currently doing just now because busy, but it's called Strong Friends Club. So you can find that on Instagram as well. But there's loads of posts from like a couple years of just different training things, lots of just kind of things that we've kind of talked about today, almost the importance of putting yourself first.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been absolutely lovely to chat to you, and I hope everybody listening has now going to sign up for a local rugby team.
Yeah, me too. Please try it. If you haven't tried it, just try it. You're going to love it. I promise.
Right. Thank you, Christine. Speak to you soon.
Thank you so much.